The world of book publishing can be notoriously difficult to navigate, especially when you're bombarded with conflicting pieces of advice. Your author friend might give you one tip, and then someone you watch on YouTube, like me, could say the exact opposite thing. And then there could be a Twitter thread going that is debating the exact same topic, and you have no idea what to think. There's a lot of confusion and misinformation when it comes to the publishing industry. So as you prepare to publish your book, it is really critical for you to seek out sources of genuine, helpful guidance. On my channel, that's what I aspire to be. My goal is to empower authors on their publishing journey, no matter what that looks like, and to help you figure out what is really the best path for you and your book. Today, I want to specifically talk about 5 commonly given pieces of publishing advice that I think are false and not helpful, and talk about alternative ways to think about it that will actually help you make informed decisions about your publishing journey. If you're a writer and you are interested in publishing a book, I recommend subscribing to my channel if you haven't already. Every week, I either post videos with advice on publishing, like today's video, or I talk about writing tips more generally, particularly geared toward novelists. So if any of that would interest you, we would love to have you join us. One more piece of housekeeping before we dive in. If you could hit that thumbs up button, it really does help out my channel and help my videos reach more writers just like you. The first piece of bad publishing advice I hear all the time is to only write in trending genres. Writers love to constantly discuss and debate what genres are quote-unquote trending in any given year. But really, in the traditional publishing realm, agents and editors very frequently dismiss the idea that trends meaningfully inform their decision-making. Now, I am guilty of making videos that discuss trending genres in every year because I know it's something that authors are always thinking about. But at the end of the day, whether or not your genre is trending should not ultimately matter. And you should certainly not only choose to write in genres that are theoretically going to be trending. That's because in the traditional publishing realm, the timeline from the time in which you get an agent and then get a book deal is very long until you're actually going to see that book published. Typically, it will be a year or 2 before the book is even on the shelf from the time you sign a book deal. So any trends that the agent or your editor at the publishing house were responding to when they signed you are basically going to be null and void by the time the book actually comes out. That's why trends really don't dictate how agents and editors make their decisions. They want to sign books that they feel are compelling and will resonate with readers. Now, there are certainly waves where we see certain genres become more popular, like vampire romance in the Twilight era, but it's just not a good use of your time to think about what publishers want and then try to write for that. Most likely, that's just going to end up feeling derivative and uninspired. Publishers truly are more interested in unique stories that you feel compelled and passionate about telling, and that, I guarantee, is going to show on the page. If it so happens that a piece of pop culture or a trending topic happens to align with the content of your book, then that's great and that's serendipitous, but it's not something you need to get published by any means. And you should absolutely not force your book to fit in some kind of trend that you think publishers want. The next bad piece of publishing advice I see all the time is don't try to get published unless you're famous. While it's true that the traditional publishing landscape is incredibly competitive, it is false that publishers are only looking to publish books by celebrities or people who have very large social media followings. Having a large audience can only help you with publishing, right? Because you have a built-in network to market your book to, and publishers want to sell as many books as possible. But they're ultimately looking for well-told stories that are offering something new and exciting. If an amazing story that captivates them crosses their desk by an unknown author who has no social media presence, that isn't going to stop them. It's not a deal breaker, and they're likely still going to express interest in that book if they loved it. When I worked in the industry, we signed plenty of authors who had little or no social media following. And if you don't believe me, you don't have to take my word for it. Go to publishersmarketplace.com If you don't have an account, you will have to buy a one-day pass, which I think costs $10. And you can look up all the recent book deals in the debut category. This means this author has never been previously published before, and this is their first book. Look at some of the authors' names who just got these book deals. I guarantee you're going to find some who don't have a large social network. This is one of the biggest pieces of bad publishing advice I see constantly, and I really want you to detach from this idea that you're never going to get published if you aren't famous or have a huge social network. Before we get into the next tips, I wanted to let you know about a free resource I created specially for my YouTube community. It's called my Story Self-Assessment Worksheet, and it's a fun, easy quiz designed to help you get unstuck with your draft and figure out what's working well and what could be improved as you go back to revise. Downloading that is going to sign you up for my newsletter, Chapter Break, where I publish exclusive interviews with publishing industry professionals and successfully published authors, and they're giving some amazing tips straight from the front lines that I don't want you to miss out on. If you want to go straight to the newsletter, the link is also in the description. The next piece of bad publishing advice I see all the time is to just get the book out there. Now, whether you are trying to pursue traditional publishing or you're interested in self-publishing, the truth is the publishing process just takes a lot of time and energy and effort. It just takes a long time to get a high-quality book written, printed, put on the shelves, and in readers' hands. Now, while you might be ready to just see the story published, you truly won't be doing your book justice by rushing this process. I really recommend being patient and making sure you're being thoughtful and taking all the necessary steps to put a high-quality book into the world. You want to make this the strongest it can possibly be. This book means so much to you that it wouldn't be worth not making it the strongest it can possibly be. So if you're querying, I know it can feel tempting to just send out your rough draft of your manuscript to see if agents have any interest in your premise or your writing, even if you know it's not the best you've ever done. But I really don't recommend doing this, because when you query literary agents with your book, you typically only have one shot per book per agent. And if they reject that book because it wasn't ready and it wasn't polished enough, then you typically can't go back to them with that same book unless you pretty much rewrite the whole thing, such that it's almost an entirely different book. So you really want to make sure you're putting your best foot forward and presenting them the very strongest possible version of your book from the get-go. To do this, I recommend heavily self-editing and getting feedback from a trusted external source if you haven't already. Now, if you're self-publishing, I don't want you to just write the draft and then put it up on Amazon and hope that it sells. Make sure you're investing in rounds of professional editing, all the way from developmental editing down to proofreading. You're also going to want to invest in high-quality cover design and book formatting, because this is going to ensure your story is high quality and on par with books that are published through publishing houses. Readers are going to be able to tell if you didn't do much work to the manuscript and it looks sloppy, and they're not going to want to buy your next book and may even leave you poor reviews. As excited as you are to get your book out there and see it published, be thoughtful and really put the time and energy that this process requires into it, because I promise you're going to feel much better about the outcome if you take the time to do all that work. The next piece of bad publishing advice I see all the time is that your first book isn't publishable. Some authors are given advice that they shouldn't even worry about trying to publish their very first manuscript because it's going to be so bad that it's unpublishable. And really, it was just a practice book, and you should focus on your second, third, fourth book. While it's absolutely true that you are only going to grow and develop in your craft as a writer as you write your subsequent books, I really resist the idea that your first book is trash by default. That is not necessarily the case at all. If it resonates with you that your first book was a mess and it's something you just want to never see the light of day ever again, by all means, work on your next books. But you wrote this book for a reason, and if you still feel passionate about it and you still think there's something there that might resonate with readers, there's no reason to put it in the trash can just because it's your first book. If you're proud of it and you're still passionate about it and you feel confident in it, by all means, continue to pursue it. When I was in the industry, we signed plenty of authors on their very first book. That doesn't mean their book was perfect on the first draft by any means, but they were continually committed to it, and they revised it and were dedicated to seeing that project through to the end, and it resulted in something that was worth publishing. So don't write off your first book just because it's your first. The final piece of bad publishing advice I want you to ignore is to focus all your efforts on building a platform. As I mentioned earlier, having an audience is only going to, of course, help you when you go out to publish your book, because that's a built-in group of people who are likely interested in buying it. However, I personally do not recommend making growing your author platform your number one priority as you are pursuing publishing. Sometimes I see authors spend all their book efforts on building a newsletter and writing content for that, or writing a blog where they share excerpts of their manuscript, or creating fancy book trailer videos, all in the interest of building a platform. And while these can potentially grow your readership, more often they're not really going to make that meaningful of a difference, but take up quite a large amount of energy and effort on your end that could have been better spent on other aspects of your publishing journey. Specifically, what I think is the most important thing for you to focus on is to make your book as strong as it can possibly be. That means investing time and energy into revising the manuscript and developing your story so that it really is achieving your vision, and so that readers are going to be so captivated by it that they can't put it down. A good book should feel effortless to read, but there was so much effort put into making it that way, I promise you. I also think it's really worth your time researching your publishing options, and if you've decided to query literary agents, be very strategic about how you're querying literary agents and who you are reaching out to. If you're self-publishing, I recommend spending a lot of time educating yourself on the different platforms, your different options for distribution, and what you'll need to do in terms of marketing and publicity to self-publish successfully. I'm not saying there's gonna be no effort needed on your end to build a platform and market your book, or that you shouldn't at all try to build an audience. But what I'm saying is I don't want you to neglect the crucial work you should be doing on your manuscript and on researching your publishing options to just solely focus on the platform. The platform is important, but is ultimately secondary to those other elements that you need to make sure are in place. I hope these tips helped you navigate your publishing journey with more confidence and a fuller understanding of what your options are. Let me know in the comments where you're at with your publishing journey and if you're leaning toward traditional publishing or self-publishing. And if you're looking for some more of my takes on terrible advice, check out my video on bad writing advice that I also think you should ignore. Before you head out, it would mean a lot to me if you hit that thumbs up button, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already to join this amazing community, and don't forget your free story self-assessment worksheet and my newsletter link in the description below. Thanks so much for watching and happy writing.